Hello and welcome. I'm Fox Spears. I'm the Program Manager of Fellowships for First Peoples Fund, and I'm a member of the Karuk tribe of Northwestern California. This video is meant to help you learn more about the 2027 Cultural Capital Fellowships and the application process. So these are the categories I'll be talking about, and the slide titles all have the topic in them, so if you need or want to skip around while you're viewing this, you should be able to do that. About the fellowship itself. So the Cultural Capital Fellowship is a year-long self-directed fellowship. It strengthens the collective spirit of artists who perpetuate generosity, wisdom, and integrity within their communities as they further their important cultural work. I also have included on this slide the how we define collective spirit, what that term means for us. So collective spirit moves each of us to stand up and make a difference, to pass on ancestral knowledge, and to extend a hand of generosity. Collective spirit is a commitment to nurture our shared humanity and honor our connection to one another, the lands around us, those who came before us, and the spirit of all things. Continuing on about this fellowship, so I want to make sure folks know if you're participating in this, if you're selected as a fellow, you would receive $10,000 in grant funding that would be used towards your proposed fellowship activities in 2027. As part of the application process, artists do need to submit a proposal of what they are seeking to accomplish during their fellowship year, and there should be two primary goals identified. You can have just two goals, that is fine. You could have more goals, and that's okay too, but you will need to specifically talk about two goals and how you would be going about achieving them in the fellowship year. These fellowships are awarded to individual Native artists who have strong community ties and are dedicated to preserving and transmitting ancestral traditions. And I do say individual Native artists, so just so folks are aware, you may have, we certainly have had folks that have applied who have a nonprofit and, or things along those lines. That's okay. Just be aware that this fellowship is awarded to an individual, so it's not something where it would be awarded to a nonprofit organization. It's intended really to be used by individual Native artists. Moving on to eligibility. So the full eligibility requirements are on the website. I don't have everything listed in here, but there are some things I wanted to make sure I talked about. So first, the first item would be an artist or culture bearer who lives within or is clearly active with and connected to their native community. And I do have the asterisk on there. You can see I did identify, give the definition of culture bearer below. I want to make sure folks understand what we mean when we say culture bearer here at First Peoples Fund. So culture bearers are artist elders in their community who restore, reclaim, and hold ancestral tribal knowledge and continue to practice and carry forward cultural art forms, beliefs, and traditions. So just so folks are aware of that. Now, artists that are working in a variety of mediums are welcome to apply. These can be traditional, they can be contemporary. We're pretty open to mediums, but that being said, we do sometimes receive applications that list art mediums that are outside of the scope of what we would normally accept. Approved mediums are going to include, traditional Native arts, so things like basketry, regalia making, storytelling. More contemporary mediums such as painting, printmaking, sculpture, and filmmaking, those are also eligible. And I'm not giving a comprehensive list of every single medium, but things along those lines or that fall within the types of traditional or contemporary art mediums that you might think of are likely going to be fine. Also, unlike the Artist in Business Leadership Fellowship, the Cultural Capital Fellowship is open to those working in the performing arts. So things like theater, singing, dance that are performed live in front of an audience, that is okay. You're fine to apply for this fellowship. For folks working in mediums that are arts adjacent, or maybe it's a little more questionable, is this individual an artist? I think it's definitely good, and I would recommend that you ask if you're not certain whether your medium is something that would be eligible. This is probably a repeat of what I've said with the Artist and Business Leadership tutorial when I was filming that. But the fellowship is really intended to have a Native cultural component. Trying to think of what else I'd said. I'll give an example. The example I'm thinking about is from artisan business leadership. But for instance, being a chef may not be something that is typically seen as an art. Um, like an art medium. But for example, Sean Sherman, who's known as the sous chef, has been a past artisan business leadership fellowship recipient because he focuses on traditional native foodways. So, there is some leeway here, but it's definitely something where if you aren't certain or you have a question, I think it's definitely worth asking me. Please feel free to reach out before you put a lot of time and effort into submitting an application. And then the last thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned is proof of tribal affiliation. So yes, this is required. This is usually going to be a tribal enrollment card or a certificate of Indian blood or CDIB, something along those lines. Those are the most typical things we see and receive as proof. If you have questions about whether the documentation you have is acceptable, this is also something where I think it's worth asking. We do review the applications for eligibility, so again, if there's something where you're not certain if it would be accepted or is going to meet our requirements, I think it is worth reaching out sooner to ask us before you go ahead and get too involved in putting an application together. Next, I do want to mention the timeline. So, the applications window, these applications are opening on Wednesday, June 17th at 8 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Applications are due by Wednesday, July 29th at 5:59 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. So I definitely encourage folks to get their applications in well ahead of that deadline is ideal. If you run into a problem, you encounter a challenge, if there's some sort of technical issue, it is best to have a little extra time to be able to deal with that if that happens. I certainly know that a lot of folks do wait until closer to the due date to submit, and that is okay. I'm not saying you can't. I certainly have done that. I'm an artist. I've done that in the past myself as well. I just want to encourage folks, if you're working on something and you run into a problem at 5:55 and reach out, that's going to be a challenge. A few minutes ahead of the deadline, we may or may not be able to help and accommodate you at that point. So I do want to let folks know applicants will be notified of their status by or on Wednesday, November 4th, 2026. So that's our plan. People should know if they've been selected or not. Fellowship recipients, the public list, they'll be publicly announced in early 2027. Again, the award year for this fellowship is going to be January 1st, 2027 through December 31st, 2027. So it's just the 2027 calendar year. And then we do normally do a fellowship convening. This has usually been in the spring. So I think, again, it's likely it will be in the spring of 2027. We do not have a location determined yet. We have done it in Santa Fe the last few years, but it certainly has also been held in other locations as well in the past. It is possible it may end up being in a different part of the year, so it could happen in fall, but usually it's been in the spring, and more information as for folks that are selected, we'll be giving them more information once we let them know that they have been selected. Next would be talking about the selection process. So the review panels and the scoring rubric. Program staff are going to conduct a technical review, so we'll confirm applicant eligibility and that the application is complete. We do have a review panel. It's an independent review panel made up of people outside of First Peoples Fund that read and score these applications remotely, and then they'll be meeting to discuss review scoring and make their recommendations, which are what we use to then slot in and select our final fellows. The scoring rubric that panelists use is shown below. So the categories they're going to be looking at, there's 4 of them: sharing, proposal and goals, collective spirit, and lived experience. And they will be giving a score of 1 through 5 on each of those 4 categories, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. I will go into what those 4 different categories are next. So starting with sharing, and I'm not necessarily, well, I'll maybe read through these, but I want to make sure that people have access to these so they understand how the applications will be scored. If anyone wants a copy of this presentation, feel free to email me. I'm happy to send you a PDF of it so you've got it handy there. Or again, you can certainly refer to it again in this video. But for sharing, the applicant is clearly active within and connected to their Native or tribal communities. I have also listed the section number and the question number of where each of these things that the reviewers would be looking at to score. So you'll see section 3, question 3 under that first one. Next, under sharing, is going to be the demonstrated ability to sustain cultural sharing as a way of life within their Native community, and that's section 3, question 4. So those two items together would make up what the review panel is going to score 1 through 5 for sharing, if that makes sense. Next, proposal and goals. So proposal, they're going to be looking at, does the proposal include activities for protecting and sharing Native cultural knowledge for the benefit of Native communities? They're going to be looking at the proposal and primary goals. Are they clearly described and are achievable within the 1-year time frame of the fellowship? And then third, they're going to be looking at your budget. Does the budget clearly support the applicant's primary goals? We do have a template that you can use for the budget. This is something that you can go in, save a copy of, and then you should be able to fill it out yourself. It's pretty simple and it would kind of add up things. We just want to make sure with the budget that we understand what you're going to do with the funding. I may talk about that a little bit later as well when I look at the application itself. Moving on, collective spirit is the third category. So we're looking at, or the review panel is looking at, how the applicant clearly articulates how their proposal will transmit cultural knowledge to others in their community. And then the second part of that would be that the applicant perpetuates generosity, wisdom, and or integrity through the work that they do within or for their communities. The final one, the final category, lived experience, this is looking at a lot of the other files that you would be uploading with your application. So first, the reference letter, which is going to be from a person who's able to affirm that the applicant is a Native artist or culture bearer who has demonstrated a commitment to their practice. The second would be your work samples or art examples. So do these work samples demonstrate the applicant's ability and understanding that they are able to successfully create work within the mediums shown? The last would be providing an artist's resume or CV. So this is going to be detailing a history of the applicant's creative practice and any related professional experience that would be in alignment with their overall application. So that's the 4 main categories of what applications will be scored on. The application itself, now we're in the how to apply section. So it is an online application. We do have a PDF with the application questions that's available on the fellowships page of our website. Under each specific fellowship, there are all the buttons where you would find, apply today, full guidelines, the tribal enrollment guidelines, but there is a button that should say application overview. If you click on that, that would give you a list of all the questions that are on the application, so you don't necessarily have to go and start the application to see those. It's meant to be a resource for you. So let's see. So I talk about, let's see, the application link. So again, that application link is also on our website. It says apply today. And then we use Submittable to accept the application. So this is an online platform that accepts applications. So you would need to have or create an account with Submittable in order to fill out and submit your application. You can save a draft and go back to it before you make your final submission. So it is something you can start, save, and go back to as much as you need to before you do submit your final application to us. Again, I just want to mention, with the application overview that we have available as a PDF document, that is not an actual application. So any emailed or printed applications are not accepted. Everything does need to come to us through Submittable. And then best practice, I just want to share for folks, please read through the entire application before you start to fill it out. Make sure to read all the questions, make sure you've looked at the guidelines. doing that type of stuff is just going to be more helpful for you so you understand what the application is, what the questions are, how to fill it out. And if you do run into questions, you can ask about them before you run into them as you are filling it out. I definitely encourage folks to take their time with it. If if writing is not your strong suit, that's okay. Do you have someone who's able to help you with it, or someone you trust to proofread? That's always a good thing to do. And I in the application for how to name your files that you're uploading, we do give some naming formats in there, and it's easiest and best if you do follow those. So the application itself and the questions. Uh, Under sections 1 and 2, section 1 is going to be applicant information, and I'm not going into all the details about every single thing that will be in here, but for these questions, there's definitely more of them, but I'm wanting to make sure I highlight the big things. So applicant information, there's a good amount of questions, but it's primarily going to be general and contact information about the applicant. I do want to mention it will ask for a primary art medium. There's going to be a list of art mediums. We would ask that you select up to 3. You may work in a lot more than 3 mediums, and that's okay, but it can get a little confusing to understand what a person's medium is if they're selecting, 6 or 8 of them. So please, ideally, just select up to 3 of the primary art mediums that you work with, or if you're applying with a proposal that's maybe in a medium you don't work with quite as often, I would make sure that whatever that medium is related to your proposal, that you do select that and include it in with your primary art mediums, because that's going to help make sure that everything aligns across your application. This is also going to be where you would need to be uploading your proof of tribal affiliation, so that would be in section 1 as well. There are, oh, I just accidentally switched to the next slide. There are going to be a lot of other questions in that section, so know that there's more than just these 3. But those are the ones I want to make sure I highlight. Section 2 is going to be that reference letter. So this reference letter needs to be from a person who can affirm that you are a Native artist or culture bearer with a demonstrated commitment to your creative practice. The letter can be from a professional or a personal acquaintance. It could be a teacher, it could be a mentor, it could be a mentee, it could be someone that you've been mentoring, it could be from a community leader or member. There's it's pretty open. They do not need to be native. They do not need to be a tribal member. That could be helpful with cultural capital, since that is more of a community and cultural based fellowship, but it is not a requirement. There is not any sort of formatting expectations around this letter, so it's really up to you to determine who you think is best going to be able to write a letter that does affirm you're a Native artist or culture bearer, and that you do have a demonstrated commitment to your creative practice or to your art medium. And it's really up to them how they want to convey that in their letter. So I would definitely think about who who would be best suited to this. And this is something where the letter is going to be uploaded to your application by you. So make sure you give your reference time to write and provide you with this letter to upload it into your application. It is rare, but if you do ask someone and they really, really don't want to give you the letter that they write, I would say reach out to me. I've had that happen once or twice. We can find a workaround if a reference doesn't want to give the letter to you and they would rather submit it to us directly, but that's not how we generally do our reference letters at the moment or have in the past. Section 3 is going to be about the artist, so a little more. So the first question there is going to be provide a brief biography of yourself and your work. You can refer to our artist directory online for examples of what this could look like. You can also search online. If you search online for like an artist bio, they'll give you tips for how to write that as well. You definitely would, I'm sure you would find examples or things to help you if you're kind of struggling with what this needs to be, what it should look like. This bio is something that if you are selected as a fellow, we do use this and publish it online in the artist directory, so be aware of that. The second question is going to be describe what you create within your artistic and or cultural practice. So what is it that you do? What are you making? What are you creating? What are you bringing into existence? It could be, something physical. You're making an object. It could be something where you are creating a performance. It can be writing. What do you do? Three is going to be share some of the ways that you are active within and connected to your native or tribal community. So, this is not something where it's like you have to absolutely live within a reservation and work within that reservation. That's absolutely fine if you do. But a native or tribal community, maybe you don't live anywhere close to your homelands, but you still are connected to and involved with them and doing work with and for them, and your proposal is related to that. Maybe you live in an urban area and you're working with native people in an urban setting where it's not really a single tribe. That's okay too. So we just want to understand, what you're doing within your community. How do you stay active and connected to folks in your native or tribal community? The fourth question is going to be, please, give a give a specific example of a time when you successfully shared your cultural knowledge and ancestral gifts with your native community. So just think of a time when you were sharing your knowledge, sharing the things that have been handed down to you around the work that you do. When have you been able to successfully share this? And again, this example should be of how you've shared it with your native community or within your native community. All of these do have word limits. Let's see, I think the bio is 150 words. The other ones are all 125 words. So just be aware of that. It can be handy for some of these longer questions with word limits if you, write them out initially in a Word document or something where you can easily get a word count so you know where you're at, and then you can copy and paste them into the application if you want. Section 4 of the application is going to be the fellowship proposal. So this has about 5 questions here. And I'm going to say that this section, really in general, the application overview documents or the actual application do have a lot more information about this, but I'm just going to cover the questions themselves. So question 1, if you're selected, what do you hope to accomplish during your fellowship year? So what are you wanting to do? What are your overall, hopes and dreams for being selected as a fellow? The next 2 questions, primary goal 1 and primary goal 2, you'll be giving your description and activities for each of those, and there is more information again in the application overview as well as the actual application. Same information, but there's more information there about what this needs to be. But it's really, what are these 2 goals that you're wanting to share about and go into more depth about? I think this is something where, ideally you might talk about them briefly in your response to question 1, but it's going to be best, I think, if you're able to make sure that each response to the question is distinct. So, I would say it's probably best if you're not just repeating the same thing amongst these questions. I would say think about how you can give answers that are unique, even if there are things where you might be able to talk about, you might be able to give a similar type of answer. If that's confusing, I apologize. I'm trying to trying to think how best to say that. But really, questions 1, 2, and 3 are about, what is your proposal? What are you wanting to do? Tell us about a couple of those goals. You can have just the 2 goals. That's okay. You could have more, really, ultimately more goals, and that's fine too. But we just need to know about at least 2 of them. Question number 4, how will your proposed fellowship goals and activities that you've talked about, how are these going to spread knowledge to other people in your native community? So, again, how is this something that fits within the purpose of this fellowship, of the Cultural Capital Fellowship? And question number 5 is going to be, select one of the following 3 values, generosity, wisdom, or integrity, and describe how it relates to the work you currently do within or for your community. So, pick one of those 3 words. Each 3 are a different value. We have 7 core values actually with First Peoples Fund, but which of these 3 values would you want to talk about in how, in how the work you do, like how it relates to the work you do? And definitely, again, I think it's important to bring in that community component. So make sure you address that as well. The last section of the application, section 5, this is going to be the supporting documents. So your artist resume or CV, I talked about that a little, or actually, I'm sorry, I don't think I did talk about that. I was talking about the bio. Artist resume or CV, this is going to be something where, it's not necessarily the same type of resume you would submit to a job application. This is something that is normally and typically tailored to what you've done as an artist. If you are to search online for how to write an artist resume or CV, or how to create one or look for examples. There's a lot online to help you figure out how best to do this. Uh, you know, if you don't have a lot of art experience, that to create something that feels like a really professional, Western art world type of resume or CV, that's okay. We're not necessarily worried about like needing people to be um, as accomplished as possible. We just want to understand what it is you do. And I think, there are a lot of things you can put on this. You can put, if you've had work shown in exhibitions, you can put relevant cultural work you may have done in your community or for your tribe. If you've done educational things or led workshops, if you've had any writing published about what you do, there's a lot of different things that could go into or on an artist resume or CV. It could include a job experience or a pardon me, a job or work experience if that is relevant to the types of work you do with your art or creative practice. So number 2, the budget, and that one I think I did mention earlier. So we do have a template that's available. This is an uploaded file that is required. The template's probably going to be the easiest thing. If you really want to use something different, I'm okay with that too, but we need to have an understanding of how you intend to spend the grant funds if they're awarded, and that really should ideally align with what you're saying in the questions in section 4 about what your proposal is, and where you're talking about your 2 primary goals. Um, you know, if you're talking about things, but then your budget is showing completely different things, that'll be confusing to the review panel, and they're likely to score you lower. So just be aware. Honestly, really everything, I would think of the whole application as you're telling a story. Does everything align? Do your work samples, like, do they match what you're talking about wanting to do? These things are always helpful. So number 3 is the artwork samples. Up to 8 uploaded files are required. I think we also do ask for a minimum of 4. There is more information, again, in the application overview document or on the actual application about if you're working with different mediums, different types of files, how best to upload those and share that information with us. So there's definitely more information there. And there is an asterisk here, so I want to highlight, rather than requiring a separate artwork sample, like an artwork sample list of things, which is pretty common, we ask instead that you fill out the metadata for each file that you upload. So the categories within the metadata are, and we would ask you to fill out title, medium, and year. And then there's also an optional category for a description. So please fill those out. That's going to be easier and best for our review panel. It's something where they don't necessarily have to then go back and forth between an artwork sample list and the artwork samples. The information is just going to show up for them right there. But this metadata is not something we are able to require, and it is something we please ask that you do fill that out. And then number 4, the final item to upload is going to be an artist photo. So this is going to be a photo of you as the artist applicant. It could be a headshot. It could be a photo of you, creating something or doing the work that you do. But we just ask for a photo of you. Again, this is something that we'll use if you are selected as a fellow. So it would be something we use on our website. I think that is everything for the application. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Again, email me if you want me to send you a PDF copy of this slide deck. Happy to do that. If you've got questions about you know, whether something aligns well, if the medium is eligible, if your proof of tribal affiliation is something that we'll accept, you know, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And thank you so much for being here. And I wish everyone the very best of luck. Thank you.